Rice, roti, idli, dosa, poha, chila, parantas. The list is endless. I'm sure I've missed out a lot of the most popular breakfast items, but yes, this is a staple form of Indian diet. Most of us begin our day with these foods in one form or the other. And actually, it keeps us going throughout the day. It gives us the energy that we need to deal with the daily stress and strain of our life. Now, something so important, don't you think we should know a little bit more about it? Hi, I'm Teresa and I'm Head of Nutrition Services for HealthifyMe. It gives me immense pleasure to help you understand a little bit more about all the grains that we consume and in its different forms. Now, what are grains? Grains are basically edible seeds from a particular kind of a grass. Grains can be divided into whole grains and refined grains, right? So, whole grains are the entire seed. It has the bran, the germ, and the endosperm. Refined grains are a more processed form of the whole grain, but it leaves it with little or no nutritional value because during the processing, the entire fiber content is either completely removed or partially removed. Now, we also have something which is called the pseudo grain. So, pseudo grains have now recently become extremely popular in India. Pseudo grains are actually another type of grass where we use the edible grains from that kind of grass. In scientific terms, it basically belongs to another scientific family, right? The grass itself is totally different. But for all nutritional purposes, these pseudo grains are also considered as whole grains. For example, quinoa, buckwheat, amaranth, even millet is considered as a pseudo grain. Coming to whole grains. Now, basically, when we talk about grains, there's a lot of discussion today. Nutrition has come into the focus so much more. People are a lot more conscious about what they eat, why they are eating it, and what are the healthier options, and how can they replace, the refined foods with healthier options, and so on and so forth, right? So, the entire discussion about whole grains and refined grains, which is better, why is it better, what are the benefits, that's what we will be talking about for the next 10 minutes, right? Now, whole grains, what makes whole grains so good, right? Whole grains are a great source of fiber, of B vitamins, and minerals like iron, magnesium, and selenium. Fiber, as we all know, gives us a feeling of fullness for a longer period of time with less calories. So, yay! Eating those whole grains can actually help you control your weight and it makes you feel full for a longer period of time, right? Now, B vitamins. Why are B vitamins so important? It aids in digestion, it promotes a healthy nervous system. So basically, all your energy requirements. Why do you feel so energetic after eating, a roti or rice, or whenever we're feeling tired, we reach out for that slice of bread, we reach out for a bowl of muesli or cornflakes. The reasons are the same, right? It's because of the energy content in it, right? And B vitamins are one way by which actually it helps in better cell activity, right? It gives enough energy for your cells and it aids in a healthy nervous system. Coming to the minerals, iron is of course very important for our blood. Magnesium helps to build healthy bones, and selenium is is a trace mineral, and it is required by our quantities in it's required by our body in very minute quantities. But here's a little known fact about selenium. A recent study actually suggested that women who consume just 200 milligrams of selenium in a year can actually prevent breast cancer. So, on this, let us be a little bit more conscious about the kind of food that we are eating and what does it contain, right? Having said that, let us go a little bit deeper into what are some of the kinds of whole grains which are available in India, that is popular in India, that's easily accessible to most of us Indians, right? Now, the most common among it is, of course, wheat, followed by rice. We also have oats, there's barley, there's jowar, there's maize or makai, there's also bajra, and there is something called kut or buckwheat, right? So these are some of the different types of whole grains which are available. Let me take you through some of the individual benefits which is present in each one of these grains. So bajra is actually very high in, it has amino acids and healthy proteins. It is also very high in iron content, right? So for a lot of Indian women who actually suffer from anemia, bajra rotis are a great way to get your iron, your daily iron requirement, and your proteins too. Jowar, which is also there, is rich in fiber and antioxidants. Antioxidants are actually something which helps to cut the free radical damage in our body, which is caused by stress and pollution. The next is makai or maize. Makai ki roti, which is very popular in Punjab, is another great source of iron. And please continue having it, but with a little less ghee in it, right? The next that we have is actually kut or buckwheat. This is great for diabetics because it helps to regulate your blood sugar levels. The last one is also coarse rice flour, not the refined rice flour which is actually used in a lot of the South Indian breakfast dishes, but coarse rice flour which is there, right? So this is actually which can be where you take the entire rice and you grind it, and that rice flour can be used to make rotis. Yet another very popular whole grain is ragi. Now ragi is great for babies. In its semi-solid form, a lot of babies actually can consume ragi in a semi-solid form, and for adults it helps to control cholesterol. So ragi mudde, which is a common dish in Karnataka, is actually a very healthy meal option. Now coming to, how much of whole grain should we actually be consuming? What is the recommended daily allowance? What is considered as healthy, right? Because for some people, it is possible they would like to cut out the refined carbs or the refined grains completely and have only whole grains. My advice to you, go ahead. You're absolutely on the right track, right? As much as of whole grains as possible that you can consume, please go ahead and consume, right? But to break it down and to make it a little bit more simpler for everyone, just to understand, for a woman, for example, let's take a woman's diet, for example. A normal woman with, a normal working life, which is mostly sedentary. Most of us women have a sedentary life. Either we sit for 8 hours in office or we are doing household work. I know household work cannot be considered as sedentary, but unfortunately that's where, in terms of activity factors, we actually consider household work in the sedentary category, right? So if you take, for a normal woman, the calorie requirement is 1200 calories, right? Now 1200 calories, assuming that we take 50 to 60% of that 1200 calories comes from carbohydrates. Assuming that it comes from carbohydrates, that means we would have to consume 600 calories of carbohydrates. When you break it down even further, that comes to round about 150 to 200 grams of carbs every day, right? Now 150 to 200 gram of carbohydrates, 50% of this should come from whole grain. So here there is a study which says that women who consume at least 3 servings of whole grain every day actually can end up cutting their can end up cutting their heart risk by almost 30%, right? So ladies, do you need more reason to actually consume those whole grains, to actually go after the millet and go after the jawar and the bajra and even oats, right? Even consuming oats is good enough. Instead of refined or polished rice, let us opt for brown rice or red rice. This is all freely available in the market across the country. Most places are now, selling these products. And I don't think accessibility is an issue today in India. I think it is just that, making that right choice, right? So please go ahead and have these kind of whole grains because the health benefits are innumerable. Now, coming to the health benefits, right, of whole grains. When we talk about, just to digress a little bit here, when every time I talk about grains, I'm only talking about whole grains, right? The reason being that refined grains, everyone knows that refined grains, the nutritional value is little or zero, right? And at this point in time, there isn't much of a debate as to, in fact, the negatives far outweigh the positives for refined grains, which is why most of my talk today is completely focused on the whole grains. So now coming to the whole grains part of it, right? Coming to the additional health benefits part of it, like I said, it definitely helps to cut your heart risk, right, by almost 30%. But how? Let us get into the specifics of it. The health benefits are many, but the first one among that is that whole grains actually help to regulate your blood sugar levels, right? So here I'm just going to digress a little bit and talk about simple carbs and complex carbs. Simple carbs are carbohydrates which break down rapidly in your system and they release blood sugar very fast into the they release sugar into the bloodstream very fast, right? In this case, what happens is that you feel full faster. There is a spike in your energy levels. There is a spike in your stamina. But what it also means is that just as quickly as your blood sugar levels have gone up, your sugar levels can drop down just as rapidly. Now, what happens here? You end up feeling tired, dizzy, weak, and the worst part, you end up feeling hungry all over again. Now, what happens with complex carbs? Complex carbs are ones where the carbohydrates take longer to be broken down in the system. Here, the sugar levels, the sugar is released into your bloodstream in a more regulated and slower manner. So again, what happens here is that you feel full for a longer period of time, your energy levels stay the same throughout, and you've consumed less calories. So you don't feel hungry within 2 hours of what you've just eaten, right? So as I was coming back, as I was saying earlier, whole grains are actually complex carbohydrates. They help to regulate your blood sugar levels. For diabetics, this is great news, absolutely great news, right? There are so many whole grains out there which are specifically meant for diabetics. Kooter or buckwheat is one such whole grain. Now, yet another health benefit of eating whole grains is that it helps to regulate or bring your cholesterol levels down. How does it do this? The fiber in the whole wheat actually prevents absorption of bad cholesterol into the bloodstream. This way, the LDL and the triglycerides are kept within control or brought down, thereby reducing your risk of heart disease. So you see, just one action has two benefits: reducing your cholesterol levels in the bloodstream and also reducing the risk of heart disease for people who consume whole grains. Yet another benefit, and actually a little known benefit of whole grains, is that for some children, it actually reduces the risk of asthma. So, young children or toddlers who are fed oats, for example, when they are very small, actually have a lower tendency or a reduced risk of developing asthma as they grow older, right? Similarly for adults too, it has a lot of anti-inflammatory properties. So particularly relating to the gut. It reduces these conditions in adults too. Now, coming to some of the other benefits, the fiber in the whole grain itself has a lot of benefits. And like I was mentioning, it aids in, proper development or a healthy nervous system. It also helps in proper digestion. It aids in proper digestion. Now, what is the benefit of proper digestion is that when you have proper bowel movements, what also happens is that it pulls out the toxins, the excess fat from the system, and it is flushed out, right? So eating whole grains has multiple health benefits. Now, does it have any negatives? I've spoken so much about, the goodness of whole grains and why we should consume it and what happens when we consume it and why should women particularly be going for it. But does it have any negatives at all? Unfortunately, the answer is yes. It does have certain negatives. They're not big enough to say that, all whole grains are actually bad. But yes, it does have certain negatives. One of it is that some whole grains, particularly wheat, does have gluten in it. Now, not all whole grains have it. Some whole grains have it. What is gluten? Gluten is a protein present in some of the whole grains. Now, there are people who developed gluten sensitivity over a period of time. What happens here is that eating these types of grains, which is basically wheat, it can make you, it can give you a feeling of a bloated feeling. It can leave you feeling very tired, nauseous. Sometimes you can even have diarrhea. So this is basically, the meaning of gluten sensitivity. And what happens here is that over a period of time, you also develop something called a wheat belly, right? Which comes because of eating too much of either refined foods or eating too much of wheat, which is not suiting you, right? Now, that is one negative. The other negative is that sometimes some people can also develop a celiac disease, which is an autoimmune disorder, right? Now, this is not to get into the specifics of it, but basically, again, here what happens is that it can damage your stomach lining. And over a period of time, if it goes untreated, it can lead to abdominal cancer. Now, I don't want to scare you off whole grains at all. This is the positives far outweigh the negatives, but you should know both sides of the coin, right? Now, people with gluten sensitivity, don't be worried at all. There are enough and more options in whole grains which will ensure that you can actually get whole grains which are gluten free, right? Some of the popular whole grains which are gluten free are millet, jawar, bajra, today quinoa, which is so popular across the country, right? These are all gluten free. Rice is gluten free, right? So let us go back to the basics. When our grandparents were actually, their diets were more natural, and actually it was full of whole grain. There was very less of refined food, which is why they have a longer lifespan, than what we probably foresee for ourselves, right? So let's get back to the basics. Let's get back to eating whole grains which are healthy for us, and which are not processed to such an extent that it is left with little or no nutrition. There are plenty of options out there, people, and we should not hesitate to make changes in our diet in order to ensure that we reap the benefits of eating whole grains. To sum it up, I hope I have helped you all understand, what are whole grains, what are some of the benefits, what are some of the negatives, and why we should consume it. Have a great day ahead.